The bitter wind howling through the Nebraska prairie that February night in 1882 carried a sound Samuel Lawson had never heard before, a desperate cry that cut through the darkness like a knife through his heart. Samuel had lived alone on his ranch outside Nebraska City for 3 years now, ever since his parents passed from fever, and he had grown accustomed to the silence broken only by cattle lowing or coyotes calling to the moon. But this sound was different, human and afraid, and it made him grab his coat and lantern without a second thought. The frozen ground crunched beneath his boots as he ran toward his winter barn, following that weak cry like a compass pointing true north. What he found would change everything he thought he knew about loneliness and love. She was huddled against the barn's eastern wall, her dress torn and mud-stained, her dark hair matted with ice crystals that caught the lamplight like broken stars. Her lips had gone blue, her skin pale as fresh snow, and when she looked up at him with eyes the color of summer grass, Samuel felt something shift deep in his chest. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Please help me." Samuel did not hesitate. He set down the lantern and scooped her into his arms, shocked by how light she felt, how her whole body trembled against him like a bird with a broken wing. She was freezing, dangerously so, and he knew that if he had come even an hour later, she might not have survived the night. "I have got you," he said, his voice rough from disuse. He did not talk much living alone. "You are safe now." He carried her across the yard to his small ranch house, shouldering the door open and bringing her straight to the fireplace where embers still glowed from his evening fire. He laid her gently on the bearskin rug and immediately set to building up the flames, adding log after log until warmth began to fill the room. "What is your name?" he asked, turning back to her. Her teeth chattered so badly she could barely speak. Emma Olsen." "Emma," he repeated, liking the way it felt in his mouth. "I am Samuel Lawson. This is my ranch. You are safe here, I promise you that." He rushed to his bedroom and returned with every blanket he owned, wrapping them around her shivering form until only her pale face showed through. Then he went to the kitchen and pumped water into his kettle, setting it over the fire to heat. His mind raced with questions, but they could wait. Right now, she needed warmth and care. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. "How did you come to be out there in the cold?" Emma's eyes filled with tears that tracked down her frozen cheeks. "The stagecoach," she managed. "Bandits stopped us about 5 miles back. They took everything, turned us all out. The others, they ran toward town, but I got turned around in the dark. I have been walking for hours." Samuel felt anger surge through him at the thought of bandits leaving people stranded in winter weather, but he kept his voice calm. "The others made it to town, most likely. You were walking the wrong direction, heading away from Nebraska City. If you had kept going, there would have been nothing but empty prairie for miles." "I thought I was going to die," she whispered. "But you did not," Samuel said firmly. "You found my barn, and now you are here, and I am going to take care of you." He made her tea when the water boiled, adding precious honey from his stores and helping her sit up enough to drink. The hot liquid seemed to bring color back to her face, and gradually her shivering lessened. Samuel watched her carefully, looking for signs of frostbite on her fingers and toes. Her boots were soaked through, and he carefully removed them along with her wet stockings, relieved to see that while her feet were dangerously cold, they did not show the blackened skin that would mean serious damage. "I need to warm your feet," he told her. "This might be uncomfortable at first." He filled a basin with lukewarm water, knowing that water too hot could hurt her cold skin, and gently placed her feet in it. Emma gasped at the sensation, and tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "I know it hurts," Samuel said softly, "but this is good." The feeling coming back means no permanent damage. As the minutes passed and Emma continued to warm, Samuel found himself studying her face in the firelight. She was beautiful, he realized, with delicate features and those remarkable green eyes. But it was more than that. There was something in her expression, a strength beneath the fear that drew him to her. "Where were you heading?" he asked, "before the bandits stopped your coach?" "Nebraska City," Emma said. "I was coming to work as a teacher. They needed someone at the new school and I needed to leave Ohio." "What made you leave Ohio?" Emma looked away, her jaw tightening. "My father wanted me to marry a man 3 times my age, a business associate of his who could pay off my father's debts. I am 22 years old, and I refuse to be sold like livestock. So I took what little money I had saved and bought a ticket west." Samuel felt a surge of respect for her courage. "That took bravery, or foolishness," Emma said with a weak laugh. "Look where it got me." "It got you here," Samuel said, "and I do not think that is such a bad place to be." Their eyes met and something passed between them, a recognition that neither could quite name. Samuel cleared his throat and stood, suddenly aware of how close they had been sitting. "You need rest," he said. "I will give you my bed. I can sleep out here by the fire." "I cannot take your bed," Emma protested. "You can and you will," Samuel said firmly. "You have been through an ordeal. You need proper rest to recover your strength." He helped her to her feet, and she wobbled slightly, still weak from her exposure to the cold. Without thinking, Samuel slipped an arm around her waist to steady her, and he felt her lean against him, trusting him completely. The feeling made something warm bloom in his chest, something he had not felt since his parents died and left him alone in the world. He settled her in his bed, piling more blankets over her, and left a lamp burning low on the bedside table. "If you need anything in the night, you call for me," he instructed. "I will hear you." "Thank you," Emma said, her voice thick with exhaustion. "Thank you for saving my life, Samuel." "You are welcome, Emma," he replied. He returned to the main room and made himself a bed on the floor near the fire, but sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about the woman in his bed, about her bravery in running from a forced marriage, about the softness of her voice when she said his name. He had been alone for so long, content with his cattle and his quiet life, but now his house felt different with Emma in it. It felt alive in a way it had not in years. When morning came, Samuel woke to find weak winter sunlight streaming through the windows. He built up the fire and started coffee, then began making breakfast, more food than he would normally prepare for himself. He was frying bacon when he heard movement from the bedroom, and Emma emerged wrapped in one of his blankets. "Good morning," he said. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," Emma replied, and indeed she looked better. Color had returned to her cheeks and her eyes were brighter. "Though I fear I look a fright." "You look like someone who survived something terrible," Samuel said honestly. "And that is nothing to be ashamed of." He served her breakfast, and they sat together at his small wooden table. Emma ate with an appetite that pleased him, and as she did, he found himself telling her about his ranch, about the cattle he raised, about his quiet life alone on the prairie. "It sounds lonely," Emma observed. "It has been," Samuel admitted, "but I got used to it, I suppose. After my parents died, there did not seem to be much point in being around other people. Everything reminded me of what I had lost." "I am sorry," Emma said softly. "That must have been very hard." "What about you?" Samuel asked. "Do you have other family besides your father?" Emma's expression clouded. "My mother died when I was 16. After that, it was just my father and me, and he changed. He became obsessed with money, with regaining the status we had lost when his business failed. When I refused to marry the man he chose, he told me I was dead to him." She swallowed hard. "So I suppose I am alone too." Samuel reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "You are not alone now." Their eyes met again, and this time the connection between them felt even stronger. Emma turned her hand over beneath his, their palms pressing together, and Samuel felt his heart begin to race. "I should get you to town," he said reluctantly. "They will be worried about you, and you have that teaching position waiting." "Yes," Emma said, but she did not sound enthusiastic about it. "Though I have no idea what state my belongings are in. The bandits took the luggage from the coach." "We will figure it out," Samuel promised. "Let me hitch up the wagon." An hour later, they were riding toward Nebraska City, Emma bundled in blankets beside Samuel on the wagon seat. The road was frozen hard, and their breath made clouds in the cold air. Samuel found himself driving slowly, in no hurry to reach town and say goodbye to the woman who had appeared so suddenly in his life. "Your ranch," Emma said. "How far is it from town?" "About 8 miles," Samuel replied. "Close enough to get supplies when needed, far enough for privacy." "It must be beautiful in spring." "It is," Samuel said. "The whole prairie turns green and wildflowers bloom everywhere. You can see for miles in every direction." "I would like to see that," Emma said softly. Samuel's heart jumped. "Would you?" Before Emma could answer, they crested a hill and Nebraska City came into view below them. It was a modest town, with a main street lined with businesses and houses spreading out around it. Smoke rose from chimneys, and even from this distance, they could see people moving about their daily business. Samuel drove straight to the sheriff's office, where a weathered man with a star on his chest was standing outside talking to several agitated people. When he saw the wagon approach, his eyes widened. "Miss Olsen," he called out, "thank the Lord. We have been organizing search parties all morning." Emma climbed down from the wagon, and Samuel followed, staying close to her side. The people gathered around, asking questions all at once, and Emma explained again about getting separated from the other passengers in the dark. "This is Samuel Lawson," she said, gesturing to him. "He found me near his barn last night and saved my life. If not for him, I would have frozen to death." The sheriff shook Samuel's hand vigorously. "You did a fine thing, Lawson, a fine thing indeed." An older woman pushed through the crowd, her face kind but worried. "I am Margaret Harper," she said to Emma. "I run the boarding house where you were meant to stay." "Oh, you poor dear, what you must have been through. Come, let me get you settled and into some dry clothes." "What about my belongings?" Emma asked. "The luggage from the coach. The bandits took everything," the sheriff said grimly. "We found the coach abandoned 5 miles out, stripped bare. The other passengers lost their valuables too, but they at least made it to town safely." "So I have nothing," Emma said quietly. "Just the clothes I am wearing." "We will help you," Margaret Harper said firmly. "The good women of this town will see you set up properly. A teacher is too valuable to this community for us not to take care of you." Samuel watched as the women of the town surrounded Emma, clucking over her and making plans. He felt suddenly out of place, unnecessary now that she was safe in town. But when Emma looked back at him over the crowd, her eyes held something he could not quite read. "Thank you again, Samuel," she called to him, "for everything." "You are welcome," he said, wishing he could say more, wishing he had the right to pull her aside and tell her not to forget about him. He climbed back onto his wagon and turned it toward home, but his heart felt heavy as he drove away. The ranch house seemed emptier than ever when he returned, the bedroom still holding the faint scent of her presence. He threw himself into his work, tending the cattle, mending fences, chopping wood, anything to keep his mind occupied. But at night, alone by the fire, he thought only of Emma. Her green eyes, her brave spirit, the way her hand had felt in his. He told himself he was being foolish, that she was an educated woman with a proper job in town while he was just a rancher. That one night did not mean anything. Yet he could not stop thinking about her. 3 days passed. Samuel went about his routine, but everything felt hollow. On the 4th day, he was surprised to hear the sound of a horse approaching his house. He stepped outside to see the sheriff riding up on a bay mare. "Lawson," the sheriff greeted him. "Got a minute, of course. Come inside, I will put on coffee." Once they were settled, the sheriff got to business. "I wanted to update you on Miss Olsen. She has settled in at the boarding house and started teaching at the school. The children already love her." Samuel tried to ignore the ache in his chest. "I am glad she is doing well. Thing is," the sheriff continued, "she has been asking about you, asked if I knew how you were doing, if your ranch was managing all right, that sort of thing." Samuel's heart leaped. "She has, more than once," the sheriff said with a knowing smile. "Now, I am just an old lawman, but it seems to me like she might appreciate a visit from the man who saved her life. Maybe you could come to the church social this Sunday. Miss Olsen will be there." "I do not usually go to town socials," Samuel said. "Maybe it is time you started," the sheriff replied. "You have been alone out here long enough, Lawson. That is no way for a young man to live." After the sheriff left, Samuel stood in his empty house and thought about what he had said. Was it possible that Emma thought of him the way he thought of her? Could something real come from one night of crisis and kindness? He decided he had to find out. Sunday morning, Samuel bathed and put on his best clothes, a clean white shirt and his good jacket. He hitched up the wagon and drove to town, his stomach churning with nerves. The church was full when he arrived, and after the service, everyone moved to the hall next door where tables had been set up with food. Samuel stood awkwardly near the door, scanning the crowd for Emma. When he finally spotted her, his breath caught. She was wearing a simple blue dress, her dark hair pinned up neatly, and she was talking with a group of children who clearly adored her. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up and their eyes met across the room. The smile that lit up her face made Samuel's decision worth it 100 times over. Emma excused herself from the children and made her way through the crowd to him. "Samuel," she said, her voice warm, "I am so happy to see you." "I heard you were doing well," he said. "Teaching." "I love it," Emma said. "The children are wonderful and the town has been so welcoming. But I have thought about you every day. I wanted to come out to your ranch to thank you properly, but I did not want to presume." "You could never be presuming," Samuel said quickly. "I have thought about you too, every day." The honesty of his words hung between them, and Emma's cheeks flushed pink. "Would you like to get some air?" she asked. "It is rather warm in here." They stepped outside into the cold February afternoon, walking slowly around the church grounds. Samuel offered her his arm, and she took it, moving close to his side. "How are you really?" he asked. "After everything that happened?" "Better than I expected," Emma said. "I think about how different things could have been if you had not found me. I owe you my life, Samuel." "You do not owe me anything," Samuel said. "I did what anyone would do." "No," Emma said firmly, stopping and turning to face him. "Not anyone. You opened your home to a stranger. You gave me your bed, cared for me with such tenderness. You made me feel safe when I was terrified. That is not something just anyone would do." "Maybe I had my own reasons," Samuel said, his voice low. "What reasons?" Emma asked, her green eyes searching his face. Samuel took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Maybe I had been alone for too long, and then suddenly there you were, brave and beautiful and in need of help. Maybe taking care of you reminded me what it felt like to matter to someone, to have a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. Maybe when I carried you into my house, something changed in me." Emma's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Something changed in me too," she whispered. When I woke up in your bed, safe and warm, I felt like I had finally found what I had been searching for when I left Ohio. Not just a job or a new place, but a home. With you." Samuel's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "Emma, I know it has only been a few days and this might be too forward, but I have to tell you, I cannot stop thinking about you. When I am at the ranch, I see you everywhere. I hear your voice. I remember how you felt in my arms, how your hand fit in mine. And I know it is probably foolish because you are a teacher and I am just a rancher, but I had to tell you." "Just a rancher," Emma said, laughing through her tears. "Samuel, you are the kindest, most genuine man I have ever met. Do you know how rare that is? In Ohio, I was surrounded by men who saw me as property, as a means to an end. But you saw me as a person worth saving, worth caring for. That means everything to me." "Can I see you again?" Samuel asked. "Properly, I mean, can I call on you?" "Yes," Emma said. "Yes, please." Unable to help himself, Samuel reached up and gently touched her face, his rough rancher's hand cupping her soft cheek. Emma leaned into his touch, her eyes closing for a moment, and when she opened them again, they were full of something that made Samuel's breath catch. "I should get you back inside before people talk," he said reluctantly. "Let them talk," Emma said with a smile. "But yes, we should go back." They returned to the social, and Samuel stayed by Emma's side for the rest of the afternoon. He met the schoolchildren who loved her, spoke with the townspeople who were curious about the rancher who had saved their teacher's life, and ate more food than he had consumed at one time in months. But mostly, he watched Emma, marveling at how she moved through the world with such grace and warmth. When it was time to leave, Samuel asked if he could visit her the following Sunday, and Emma agreed with such enthusiasm that it made his heart soar. He drove home in the gathering dusk, his mind full of possibilities. The next week passed slowly for Samuel, but this time his solitude felt different. Instead of weighing on him like a burden, it felt like anticipation, like he was waiting for something wonderful to begin. He worked hard on the ranch, and in his spare time, he found himself making small improvements to his house, things he had neglected for years. He fixed the loose board on the porch, oiled the squeaky door hinges, even started building a new bookshelf, thinking Emma might like a place for books. When Sunday finally came, Samuel drove to town and picked Emma up from the boarding house. They drove out into the countryside, away from curious eyes, and found a peaceful spot overlooking the frozen prairie. "It is so beautiful here," Emma said, gazing out at the endless white landscape. "So different from Ohio. Do you miss it?" Samuel asked. "Not even a little," Emma said honestly. "Ohio was my past, this is my future." They talked for hours, sharing stories from their lives. Samuel told her about growing up on the ranch, about his parents and their dreams for the place, about the loneliness that had settled over him after they died. Emma told him about her childhood, about her mother's gentle nature and her father's transformation after her death, about the suffocating expectations that had driven her west. "I never wanted to be someone's property," Emma said. "I wanted to be my own person, to make my own choices. That is why I became a teacher. I wanted to help children learn to think for themselves, to know they have value beyond what others assign them." "You are an extraordinary woman, Emma Olsen," Samuel said. "And you are an extraordinary man, Samuel Lawson," Emma replied. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Samuel drove Emma back to town. Before she went into the boarding house, she turned to him and took both his hands in hers. "Thank you for today," she said. "It was perfect." "Can I see you again next Sunday?" Samuel asked. "You can see me whenever you want," Emma said. "I am not going anywhere." The weeks that followed fell into a beautiful pattern. Samuel came to town every Sunday, and he and Emma would spend the day together. sometimes attending church socials, sometimes just driving out into the countryside to talk. With each passing week, Samuel felt himself falling deeper in love with her. He loved her intelligence, the way she spoke passionately about her students. He loved her kindness, the way she noticed small details and remembered things he told her. He loved her strength, the courage it had taken to leave everything behind and start fresh. And from the way Emma looked at him, the way she smiled when she saw his wagon coming down the street, the way she held his hand as they walked, Samuel dared to hope that she felt the same way. Winter began to give way to spring. The snow melted, and the first green shoots appeared in the prairie grass. The town of Nebraska City buzzed with life as farmers prepared for planting season. And Samuel Lawson, once content in his solitude, found himself transformed by love. One warm Sunday in late March, Samuel took Emma out to his ranch for the first time since the night he had found her. She walked through his house, touching things gently, and he watched her anxiously, wanting her to like it. "This is where you put me that night," she said, standing in the doorway of his bedroom. "I remember the quilt and the lamp you left burning." "I was so worried about you," Samuel said. "I checked on you 3 times that night to make sure you were still breathing." Emma turned to him, her eyes soft. "You took such good care of me." Samuel stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Emma, there is something I need to tell you, something I have been feeling for weeks now, but I did not know how to say it." "What is it?" Emma asked. "I love you," Samuel said, the words coming out in a rush. "I know it might seem fast, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love your kindness and your courage. I love how you make me laugh, how you listen when I talk about the ranch. I love how my house felt when you were in it that night, like it was finally a home again. I love you, Emma, and I want you in my life, not just on Sundays, but always." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she was smiling. "I love you too," she said. "I think I started falling in love with you that very first night, when you wrapped me in blankets and made me tea and promised I was safe. No one has ever made me feel the way you do, Samuel. With you, I am not a teacher or a runaway daughter or anything else. I am just Emma, and that is enough." "You are more than enough," Samuel said, pulling her into his arms. "You are everything." He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home, like every lonely year of his life had been leading to this moment. Emma kissed him back with equal passion, her arms wrapping around his neck, and when they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Marry me," Samuel said. "I know we have only known each other a few months, but I do not want to waste another day without you. Marry me, Emma. Come live on this ranch with me. We will build a life together, a real home full of love and laughter. Say yes." "Yes," Emma said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Samuel, I will marry you. There is nothing I want more." They set the wedding date for late May, wanting to give Emma time to finish the school year and make proper arrangements. The town of Nebraska City was delighted by the news, and the women who had welcomed Emma when she arrived now threw themselves into preparing for her wedding. Margaret Harper insisted on hosting a party at the boarding house, and the sheriff's wife began sewing Emma a wedding dress. Samuel spent those weeks preparing the ranch for his bride. He added rooms to the house, built a proper henhouse for chickens, planted a vegetable garden near the kitchen. Every nail he hammered, every board he cut, was done with love and anticipation. Emma visited the ranch whenever she could, on weekends and after school, and together they made plans for their future. They talked about expanding the cattle herd, about eventually starting a family, about growing old together on this land they both loved. "I want children," Emma said one evening as they sat on the newly repaired porch watching the sunset. "Lots of them, if we are blessed that way." "I want that too," Samuel said, squeezing her hand. I want to fill this house with the sound of children's laughter. I want to teach our sons to work the ranch and our daughters to be as strong and smart as their mother. I want them to know they are loved, Emma said. That they never have to be anyone but themselves. They will know, Samuel promised. We will make sure of it. The wedding day arrived with perfect spring weather. The whole town turned out to see Emma Olsen marry Samuel Lawson in the little church on Main Street. Emma wore the white dress the sheriff's wife had made, simple but beautiful, with wildflowers in her hair that Samuel had picked that morning. Samuel wore his best suit, his face shining with happiness as he watched his bride walk down the aisle. They spoke their vows before God and the community, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Emma with such tenderness that many in the congregation wiped their eyes. The reception was held in the church hall, with food and dancing and celebration that lasted well into the evening. But eventually, Samuel and Emma slipped away, climbing onto the wagon that would take them to their ranch, to the home they would share. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Lawson?" Samuel asked as they drove through the warm spring night. "It feels perfect," Emma said, resting her head on his shoulder. "It feels like everything I went through, all the pain and fear and uncertainty, was worth it because it led me to you." "You led yourself to me," Samuel said. "You were brave enough to choose your own path, and that path brought you to my barn on the coldest night of winter." "Our barn now," Emma said with a smile. "Our barn," Samuel agreed. "Our ranch, our life." When they arrived home, Samuel carried Emma over the threshold, both of them laughing. He set her down gently in the main room, where a fire crackled in the hearth and lamps cast a warm glow. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson," he said. "Welcome home, Mr. Lawson," Emma replied. They came together then, husband and wife, and the love between them burned brighter than any fire. Life on the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. Emma gave up her teaching position to focus on building their home and helping Samuel with the ranch work. She discovered she had a talent for raising chickens and keeping bees, and soon they had fresh eggs and honey to supplement their table. Samuel taught her to ride horses and rope cattle, and she taught him to read Shakespeare aloud in the evenings. They were happy in a way that made their neighbors smile to see them. When they came to town for supplies, they always held hands. When they worked together on the ranch, they moved with the easy synchronization of two people perfectly matched. They laughed often, talked for hours, and fell more deeply in love with each passing day. As autumn arrived, Emma discovered she was expecting their first child. Samuel was overjoyed, fussing over her constantly until she laughed and told him she was not made of glass. But she loved his attentiveness, the way he made sure she rested, the way he talked to her growing belly and told their unborn child about the ranch and the life they would have. "I hope it is a boy," Samuel said one evening, his hand on Emma's rounded stomach. "A son to help on the ranch." "I hope for a healthy baby," Emma said. "Boy or girl, I will love them just the same." Winter came again, and Emma watched the snow fall outside their windows with wonder. "A year ago I was nearly dying in this snow," she said. "And now I am warm and safe and carrying our child. Life is strange and beautiful." "The best things in life are often both," Samuel agreed. When spring returned, bringing wildflowers and green grass, Emma went into labor. Samuel rode hard to town to fetch the midwife, Margaret Harper, and then paced anxiously outside the bedroom while the women worked. He had never been so terrified in his life, thinking of all the things that could go wrong, praying desperately for Emma and their baby to be safe. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was really only one, he heard a baby's cry, strong and healthy. Margaret Harper opened the door with a smile. "Come meet your son," she said. Samuel rushed into the room to find Emma propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle in her arms. When she pulled back the blanket to show him, Samuel felt his eyes fill with tears. His son was perfect, red-faced and squalling with a tuft of dark hair. "He is beautiful," Samuel whispered, gently touching the baby's impossibly small hand. "He looks like you," Emma said with a tired smile, "strong and handsome." "What should we name him?" Samuel asked. "I was thinking Thomas," Emma said, "after my mother's father. He was the only person in my family who told me to follow my heart, even if it meant leaving everything behind." "Thomas Lawson," Samuel said, trying it out. "I like it. Thomas, you are going to have the best mother in the world, and I promise to be the best father I can be." The baby stopped crying at the sound of Samuel's voice, and his tiny eyes opened, unfocused but trying to see. Samuel felt his heart expand with a love he had never known existed, a fierce protective tenderness that made him understand his own parents in a new way. They settled into the rhythms of new parenthood, taking turns walking the floor with Thomas when he cried at night, marveling at every small milestone. Emma proved to be a wonderful mother, patient and loving, and Samuel discovered that fatherhood suited him. He loved carrying his son around the ranch, pointing out the cattle and the horses, telling him stories even though Thomas was too young to understand. "He will grow up knowing this land," Samuel said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset while Thomas slept in Emma's arms. "He will know what it means to work hard and build something lasting. He will also know what it means to love," Emma said, "because he will see it every day between us." 2 years passed in contented happiness. Thomas grew into a sturdy, cheerful toddler who followed his father everywhere, trying to help with chores in his clumsy way. And then Emma discovered she was expecting again. "I hope it is a girl this time," she said, her hand on her still flat stomach. "A daughter to balance out our son. As long as mother and baby are healthy, I do not care which," Samuel said, kissing her forehead. "But a little girl with your green eyes would be something special." This pregnancy was easier than the first, and when Emma went into labor on a warm September afternoon, Samuel was much calmer. Margaret Harper came again, and this time Samuel sat with Thomas in the main room, telling his son stories while they waited for his sibling to arrive. When the baby's cry finally came, it was different from Thomas's had been, higher and sweeter. Samuel's heart jumped. "Come meet your daughter," Margaret called. Samuel picked up Thomas and carried him into the bedroom where Emma held a tiny baby girl wrapped in a soft blanket. Thomas leaned forward, curious, and touched his sister's cheek with one gentle finger. "Baby," he said, one of his few words. "Yes, this is your baby sister," Emma said, smiling. "Samuel, meet Catherine." "Catherine," Samuel repeated, looking down at his daughter's face. She was beautiful with Emma's delicate features and a fuzz of dark hair. "Hello, little one. Welcome to our family." Life with 2 children was busier, but no less joyful. Thomas was a protective older brother, always wanting to help take care of baby Catherine. Emma juggled motherhood and ranch work with grace, and Samuel marveled daily at her strength and capability. The ranch prospered under their care. Samuel's cattle herd grew, and Emma's chickens and bees produced enough that they could sell eggs and honey in town for extra income. They added more rooms to the house as their family grew, built a proper barn for the horses, and fenced more pasture land. When Catherine was 2 and Thomas was 4, Emma found herself expecting again. 3 children, Samuel said, his hand on her belly. "We are building quite a family, Mrs. Lawson." "Is it too many?" Emma asked. "Not at all," Samuel said firmly. "Every child is a blessing. I just want to make sure you are all right. 3 pregnancies in 6 years is a lot." "I am stronger than I look," Emma reminded him. "And I love being a mother. I love our family, Samuel. I would not change anything." This time they had another son, born on a snowy December morning. They named him Daniel, and he proved to be the loudest of their children, with a lusty cry that could be heard across the ranch. "He has strong lungs," Samuel said proudly, walking the floor with Daniel while Emma rested. "He will probably never stop talking once he learns how." Samuel proved to be right. Daniel was a chatterbox from the moment he learned to speak, full of questions and observations. Thomas remained the steady, responsible oldest child, while Catherine was tender-hearted and gentle, always rescuing injured birds or befriending stray cats. Years passed in a blur of childhood milestones, ranch work, and deepening love. Samuel and Emma's marriage grew stronger with time, weathering the challenges that came their way with patience and partnership. When drought struck one summer, they worked together to keep the cattle alive, hauling water from the creek and rationing their supplies carefully. When illness swept through the town, they nursed their children through fevers and prayed together by their bedsides. Through it all, they never forgot how they had met, how Emma had nearly died in the snow and Samuel had saved her. Every winter, on the anniversary of that night, they would stand together by the barn where he had found her and remember. "Sometimes I still cannot believe it," Emma said on their 10th anniversary of meeting. They were older now, with lines forming around their eyes and threads of gray in their hair, but to Samuel, Emma was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her. "Sometimes I think about how easily I could have died that night and then none of this would exist. Our children, our home, our life together." "But you did not die," Samuel said, pulling her close. "You survived and you found me and we built something beautiful. That is what matters." "I love you," Emma said, "more now than ever." "And I love you," Samuel replied. "You are still the bravest, most wonderful woman I have ever known." Their children grew. Thomas proved to have his father's gift for ranching, learning quickly and working hard. Catherine discovered a love of reading and teaching, and Emma suspected she would become a teacher like her mother had been. Daniel, true to form, wanted to be everything at once: a rancher, a sheriff, a storekeeper, changing his mind daily. When Thomas was 16, Samuel began teaching him the business side of running the ranch, sharing the knowledge his own father had passed down to him. It filled Samuel with pride to see his son growing into a capable, honorable young man. "You are doing a good job with him," Emma said one evening, watching Thomas work with the horses, "with all of them. You are exactly the father I knew you would be." "We are doing a good job," Samuel corrected. "Everything good in my life comes from you, Emma. You made me brave enough to love again when I thought I would be alone forever." More years passed. Their children grew into young adults, each finding their own path. Thomas married a sweet girl from town and started his own section of the ranch. Catherine, as Emma had predicted, became a teacher, taking over the same schoolhouse where Emma had once taught. Daniel, after cycling through various interests, discovered a talent for working with horses and began training them for sale. Samuel and Emma grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. On quiet evenings, they would sit on their porch, watching the sun set over the prairie that had witnessed their entire life together. "You ever regret it?" Samuel asked one such evening. They were both well into their 50s now, their hair more gray than dark, their hands weathered by years of ranch work. "Giving up teaching to live out here with me?" "Never," Emma said firmly. "Not for one single moment. I found my true calling when I found you, Samuel. I was meant to be here on this ranch building this life with you. Everything else was just the road that led me home." "You made me whole again," Samuel said. "Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me how to live again, how to hope and dream and love." "We saved each other," Emma said simply. As they moved into their 60s, Samuel and Emma slowly turned over more of the ranch work to Thomas and his growing family. They had grandchildren now, 5 of them, with more likely on the way. The ranch house was often full of the sound of children's laughter, just as Samuel had once dreamed. Emma's health began to decline when she was 67. It started with tiredness, then progressed to weakness and pain that no doctor could fully explain. Samuel cared for her with the same tender devotion he had shown on that first night when he found her freezing by his barn, holding her hand through the hard days, reading to her, telling her stories of their life together. "I am not afraid," Emma told him one spring morning. They were in their bedroom, sunlight streaming through the windows. Outside, they could hear their grandchildren playing. "I have had the most wonderful life, Samuel, more than I ever dreamed possible when I left Ohio all those years ago." "You are not leaving me yet," Samuel said, his voice fierce despite the tears in his eyes. "We still have more years together. We have to watch our grandchildren grow up. We have to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary." Emma smiled, touching his weathered face with her still graceful hand. "We will," she promised. "I am not ready to leave you either." And she kept that promise. Emma's health stabilized, and though she never regained her full strength, she continued to be the heart of their family for several more years. She and Samuel did celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, with all their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a party that lasted 2 days. On that anniversary, Samuel stood before his assembled family and raised a glass. "50 years ago, I married the most extraordinary woman in the world," he said. "She came into my life when I had given up on happiness, and she showed me what it meant to truly live. Every day with Emma has been a gift. She is my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, and the love of my life. I would go through all the loneliness of my early years again if I knew it would lead me to her." Emma, seated in her rocking chair with a blanket over her knees, had tears streaming down her face. "And I would brave 1,000 winter storms if I knew Samuel Lawson would be there to find me," she said. "He saved my life in every way a person can be saved. I love you, Samuel. I always have and I always will." They lived several more peaceful years together, growing older but never growing apart. Their love remained constant, a steady flame that warmed everyone around them. When Emma finally passed away at the age of 74, it was peacefully in her sleep, with Samuel holding her hand just as he had on so many nights throughout their marriage. Samuel grieved deeply, but he also felt profound gratitude for the life they had shared. He lived for 5 more years, spending his time with his children and grandchildren, telling them stories about their remarkable grandmother. He worked on the ranch as long as he was able, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of the land. On a cold February night, almost exactly 57 years after he had found Emma freezing by his barn, Samuel Lawson passed away in his sleep. His children found him the next morning, lying peacefully in the bed he had shared with Emma for half a century, a faint smile on his weathered face. They buried him next to Emma on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the wide Nebraska sky. The headstone read, "Samuel Lawson, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. He lived with love and died with peace." The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations who never forgot the story of how it all began. They told their children about the winter night when Samuel found Emma nearly frozen, about the tender care that sparked a great love, about 2 people who chose each other, and built a legacy that would endure. And sometimes, on cold winter nights, when snow fell softly over the Nebraska prairie, family members swore they could feel the presence of Samuel and Emma watching over the ranch they had built together. their love as eternal and unchanging as the land itself. The barn where Samuel had first heard Emma's cry still stood, maintained carefully by generations of Lawsons. Young couples getting engaged often went there to exchange their promises, standing where love had first bloomed from kindness and chance. The house had been expanded and modernized over the years, but the original rooms remained, including the bedroom where Samuel had first cared for Emma, where their children had been born, where they had grown old together. The story of Samuel and Emma became part of Nebraska City's history, told and retold as an example of how love can arise from the most unlikely circumstances, how one act of compassion can change everything, how two lonely souls can find each other even in the darkest, coldest night. Their great-great-grandchildren still worked the ranch, still raised cattle on the same prairie their ancestors had tended. They knew the story by heart, how great-great-grandmother Emma had fled a forced marriage and ended up lost in a winter storm, how great-great-grandfather Samuel had heard her cry and saved her life, how that one night of tender care had blossomed into a love that lasted over 50 years and created a family legacy that endured for generations. In the town cemetery, the graves of Samuel and Emma Lawson were never without fresh flowers. Their descendants made sure of that, honoring the couple whose love had given them all life. The inscription on Emma's headstone read, "Emma Lawson, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother." She was brave enough to choose her own path, and wise enough to recognize home when she found it. Together, even in death as they had been in life, Samuel and Emma rested on the land they had loved, their story complete and their legacy secure. They had found each other in the cold and dark, had built warmth and light together, and had created something that would last long after they were gone. It was a love story for the ages, simple and profound, proving that sometimes the greatest romances begin not with grand gestures but with simple kindness, not in ballrooms or drawing rooms but in the humble spaces where real life unfolds. Samuel and Emma had lived and loved with authenticity and devotion, and their story continued to inspire everyone who heard it. The ranch thrived through changing times, surviving economic depressions, dust bowls, world wars, and all the challenges that came with the passage of years. Through it all, the descendants of Samuel and Emma Lawson held fast to the values their ancestors had embodied: hard work, integrity, compassion, and above all, love. And so the story that began on a freezing February night in 1882, when a lonely cowboy heard a desperate cry and found a woman dying in the snow, lived on. It lived in the land, in the family, in the very air of the ranch that Samuel and Emma had built together. Their love had not only saved each other but had created ripples that extended far beyond their own lives, touching generation after generation. It was proof that love, true love, never really ends. It transforms and continues, passed down like a precious inheritance, more valuable than any land or money. Samuel and Emma's love story became immortal, a testament to the power of choosing compassion, of opening your heart even when it is easier to stay closed, of believing in the possibility of hope and home even in the darkest winter. And in that belief, in that choice to love despite all the reasons not to, Samuel and Emma Lawson had created something truly eternal.